I bet I can name an Excel function that you've never heard of. Are you ready? It's called files, and it's available in all versions of Excel, but not in the conventional way, which I'll cover in a moment. The files function lists all the files contained in a specified folder, and there are loads of uses for this information. Now, files is a legacy Excel for macro function. These are very old functions that Microsoft have hidden, but you can still use them if you know how. Don't worry, it's easy. To demonstrate the function, I'm going to get a list of files I have in this folder, and notice I've added a backslash and an asterisk on the end, which is required for the function to work. Now, if you type equals files into Excel, you'll notice it doesn't even appear in the list of functions available. Instead, to enable the files function in modern Excel, we need to define it as a named formula, but don't worry, it's super easy. Go to the Formulas tab, click on Define Name. We're going to name the formula File List, and in the Refers To section, type in equals files, and then you can either type the folder path in here or select the cell containing the folder path, which is what I'll do, close parentheses, and click OK. And now to use it in versions of Excel that support dynamic arrays, type equals, and then start to type your formula's defined name. There it is in the list. I can tab to select it, press Enter, and you can see it spills an array of the file names in that folder. However, you probably want your list in a column, in which case let's wrap it in the transpose function, and now it spills the result down the column. Now, if you don't have a version of Excel that supports dynamic arrays, I'll show you an alternate formula shortly. First of all, let's look at the folder path. If I select the cell, you can see in the formula bar that I've used the cell function to return the file path, and we can see it there. And then I've used text before to extract just the folder path component. That is everything before the square bracket. Then I've used the ampersand to join an asterisk on the end. Now, of course, you can simply hard key the folder path here if you don't need the path to dynamically update based on the location this file saved in, and it will work just the same. If you have an earlier version of Excel that doesn't support the text before function, you'll find an alternate formula in the file you can download from the link in the video description. Now, what if you want to narrow down the list to specific file types? For example, maybe you only want Excel files. We can modify the path to include the file extension by using the ampersand and appending XLSX on the end. And now it only lists Excel files in the folder. Or maybe you want to be able to select the file type from a list. For example, here I've got a list of common file types, and I want to be able to select the file type displayed in the list from this drop-down. So instead of hard keying the file type on the end, I can use an if function to say if in this cell here we have the text all files, then we're going to append nothing. Otherwise, let's append whatever the value is selected in the drop-down list. Close parentheses on my if. So you can see at the moment we've selected all files and it's displaying them all. If we select XLSX, now we get all the Excel files. There's our docs and PDFs. I can also count all the files in a folder by wrapping my formula in the count A function. So our formula is called file list, close parentheses. And of course, if I select a different file type, it updates accordingly. We can also automatically generate the list of file names and hyperlink them, so you can click to open the file from Excel. However, the hyperlink function doesn't work with a spilled array unless you're in Excel Online. So let's look at a technique that will allow you to generate the file names with hyperlinks. By the way, this is also the technique you can use if you don't have dynamic arrays. Let's start by using index to extract a list of the file names, and this method is going to work in all versions of Excel. Now I've created a new files formula for this sheet called file list non-DA. You don't have to, but I've done that just to differentiate them for the purpose of this tutorial. Now, index wants to know the row number of the array returned by the file list non-DA formula. I want to return row 1 first and then copy it down to return the next row and so on. So I can use the row function and return the row number of cell A1. That's going to return 1. And then as I copy it down, it's going to reference cell A2. That's going to return 2, and so on. So let's close index. There's my first file. Let's copy it down. And if we look in the formula bar, this one's referencing A2, A3, A4, and so on. And notice I get some errors, and that's where I've reached the limit of how many files I have in this folder. Now I can simply delete these, but if I expect to add more files to the folder, I want to automatically pick them up, in which case we can wrap index in if error just to hide the errors until such time as we might need the formula. So we're going to just return a blank if it returns an error. Let's copy that down, and there we go. Next, I want to make this list hyperlinks so that I can open the files by simply clicking on the file name. So to do that, I'm going to insert the hyperlink function before index. Now the first argument of the hyperlink function is the link location. So at the moment you can see index is only returning the file name, not the link location. So we can pick up the link location from here, but it includes an asterisk on the end. So we can use the left function to get the folder name. I'm going to F4 to absolute. How many characters to the left do we want? Well, we don't know how many characters in the folder path. So let's use the length function, or len for short, to find the length of the text in this cell. And then we want everything except the asterisk. So -1 for the asterisk. Close my left function. And then we're going to join it to the result of index. And that's going to give us the full file path. Then I need the friendly name. So the friendly name is basically the file name. So we'll just grab this index formula again, and we'll reuse it in the friendly name. And then we'll close parentheses on hyperlink, press enter, and let's copy it down. Now if I hover my mouse over the file names, you can see my mouse cursor changes to a hand, and I can click to open that file. Now unfortunately, when you create the links like this, they don't get the default hyperlink formatting. So we can select them all, and then on the Home tab, use conditional formatting, and we'll create a new rule. And we're going to use a formula to determine which cells to format. So basically, if this cell here, and I'm just going to F4 to absolute just the column, not the row. If it's not equal to blank, then we're going to format it, and we'll make the font blue, and we'll give it a single underline. Click OK, and OK, and now they look like hyperlinks. And if more files are added to this list, they'll automatically appear here with the correct formatting. Now because the files function is a macro, you need to save this file as a .xlsm, and then you need to enable XLM macros to allow the files function to actually run. To do that, go to the File tab. At the very bottom, go to Options, and then under Trust Center and Trust Center Settings, go into Macro Settings, and make sure Enable XL 4.0 macros when VBA macros are enabled. Make sure that's selected. And it's perfectly fine to disable VBA macros with notification. And then under File Block Settings, scroll down here and make sure XL4 macro sheets and add-in files is open. And at the bottom, you want Open Behavior for selected file types to have this bottom one selected. Open selected file types in Protected View and allow editing. And then click OK and OK. And that way, when you reopen this file or someone else reopens this file, they can enable macros, and this files function will be able to calculate. Another way to get the file names from a folder that works in all versions of Excel and doesn't require any macro enabling is with Power Query. Power Query is also able to get the file names from subfolders along with file metadata like date created, date modified, and file size. So for Power Query, we'll go to the Data tab, Get Data from File from Folder, and then in the folder name, you can either browse to it. I'm just going to copy and paste it in. That'll save me a job. Click Open. The preview shows a list of the file names and some of the metadata. Let's go into Transform Data, and this will allow me to choose what info I want to bring in. So here's the list of my files. I've got the file type, the date accessed, modified, and created. And then in the Attributes column, if I just click in the white space in one of the cells here, at the bottom, you can see the metadata for this file. So we can see the file size and various other information. Now I want to just capture the file size. So let's click on the double arrow on the column. And here I can select size from this list. I'm going to deselect use original column name as prefix and click OK. And now I have the file size. Let's change the data type here to a whole number. Now, I also don't want this content column, So let's delete that. Just press delete. And I'll keep the rest of the information. That's going to be handy. And we'll give this a new name. We'll call it Files in Folder. And I'm going to close and load to. This just allows me to choose where I load it. I'm going to put it in a table on a new worksheet. So I'll click OK. And now I have a list of the files in my folder. I can also do things like insert a slicer for this table. And for example, if I want to be able to filter it based on file type, I can insert a slicer for the extension and then click OK. There's my slicer. Let's just bring it up there and we'll resize it a little bit. I can also make it green in keeping with my table. And now I can easily filter the table based on the file extension and click the X to clear it. And I can get updates to this list by refreshing it. Just right click, click refresh. Power Query is going to go away to the folder, grab any new information, whether that's the date accessed or new file names. Pretty cool. Now, if you're curious to discover one Excel function that can handle 90% of your calculations with ease, you'll need to watch this video next. I'll see you there.